Artificial intelligence, AI, has been a topic that has always resonated with computer scientists the world over for well over 50 years. However, until relatively recently, it has not captured the broader imagination owing to the challenges that were faced in creating a general purpose AI computer. Then, in 1996, the reigning world chess champion Garry Kasparov was defeated by a supercomputer built by IBM called Deep Blue. This breakthrough instantly captured the imagination of the entire world, opening up limitless speculations on the possibilities of AI specializing in certain tasks and eventually taking over all jobs traditionally performed by humans at some point in the future. It was around this time in AI's trajectory that Dr. Alok Aggarwal, a luminary in the field of AI and a research scientist at IBM's storied Watson Labs, then went on to lead IBM's research initiative in an entirely new and remarkably successful direction by setting up a dedicated lab which was initially incubated within the auspices of IIT Delhi in India. They met with several successes, such as the design and implementation of accurate algorithms for auctioning for e-commerce applications and schedule optimization for a paper mill that vastly improved its supply chain. All of these projects taken together at IBM's India Research Lab were the stepping stones for Dr. Aggarwal, upon which he continued his arc of an illustrious career in AI and in data science.
So let me just why is this whole big data science and the entire area during the last 5 or 6 years become so important? So let me just digress and discuss the last 20 years very quickly. So Gordon Moore in 1965 said that basically every 18 months processing power and memory, the cost would decrease by half, or in other words, they would increase by double every 18 months. So if you look at that over a period of 30 years, that means it has gone up by a million times. Right? So what we were able to do in the paper mill scheduling about in 3,000 minutes, you can do it literally using the processing power and the memory of your smartphone in 3 minutes today. So that's definitely one of the most important things that has taken place during the last 20, 30 years, that Moore's law has been in spite of what people felt, Moore's law has been continuing to increase the power and memory. The second is parallel computation is now possible with respect to MapReduce first and now Hadoop, which allows parallel computation, and then of course then Spark, Storm, and other processing systems are coming in which improve it further. And then the algorithms part. For a long period, developing parallel computation algorithms was part of theoretical computer science or academic places like MIT or Harvard or Stanford, IBM and AT&T, but now it's down in the trenches where people can use it. Before we go into discussing what happened after 1993, it's worthwhile to very quickly discuss as to what happened between 1950 and 1993, how AI came about. In 1950, Alan Turing gave what is known as the imitation game, whether a computer can imitate a man who's sitting in a different room than the judge, and the judge is not able to figure out whether it's a computer or the human. This particular thing became very important later on, and in 1956 the first AI conference was created. A lot of hype was generated during 1956 and 1975. A lot of new ideas came about with machine learning, natural language processing, and even deep learning networks. May surprise you, but the first deep learning network was given in Soviet Union by Ivakhenko and Lapa in 1965, and in 1971 Ivakhenko already gave an algorithm to train a deep learning network. However, that particular hype all fell apart by 1975. The reason was that especially the researchers, got all excited and they thought they could create a general purpose AI computer. An AI computer which is pretty much simulates a person, a human completely, just like what Turing had given it as a challenge. In fact, a movie, 2001 Space Odyssey, describes that computer as HAL 2000. But by 1975, they realized it was not possible. One was the computing power was extremely costly and slow. In fact, creating a computer which has just 86 billion artificial neurons would have taken about the same cost as the entire GDP of United States in 1974. The second is researchers also realized that actually we do not really understand how humans think. There is fundamental mystery behind human thought. That indeed was the case in 1970s, still remains the case now. We really do not know how computers would be able to think like humans, because we do not know how humans think. So, in fact, one of the very important researchers who can be considered one of the three fathers of AI, John McCarthy, once said, creating a general purpose AI computer would require conceptual breakthroughs and would require about 1.7 Einsteins and 0.3 Manhattan projects. So this basically led to a resurgence of AI. Starting 1995, we already discussed the chess game. Another computer program, Logistello, beat Othello. And then in 2011, IBM created IBM Watson, IBM Research did, which won the Jeopardy game. And since then, there have been a lot of interesting advances that have taken place in terms of how computers are able to compete or do better than humans. For example, Facebook in 2014 created DeepFace, which matches human accuracy for identifying human faces. Mount Sinai created DeepPatient, which predicts schizophrenia better than psychiatrists. Of course, AlphaGo, which was created by Google, became the world champion in the game Go. Similarly, Waymo started training driverless cars, and now there are at least 30 different companies which are in the process of bringing out AI-based driverless car systems. But it didn't stop there. You have profound AI with radiologists for early cancer detection, which are helping now radiologists with early breast cancer detection. Also, in 2018, an AI-based system created a portrait of a human, Edmund Bellamy, which sold for almost $500,000. And more recently, AI-based systems have been better predictors of chronic illness and early deaths in middle-aged patients than doctors. So a lot of these advances have taken place. But as you can see, these advances are fundamentally different than the advances that researchers were looking for between 1950 and 1975. These advances in particular are solving a particular problem, not trying to create a general purpose AI machine which would rival a human, not creating a HAL 9000, but solving a given problem, creating an app or creating a software that will solve a given problem. So going forward, now that we understand that AI software systems are trying to solve each problem, what is likely to happen during the next 10 years? We believe that there will be a Cambrian explosion of AI apps during the next 10 years. Cambrian explosion actually occurred in about 500 million years ago, when suddenly there were many organisms that came out of single cells, and these organisms were multicellular organisms. This particular explosion of multicellular organisms, many different species, this particular time period was about 50 million years. Very small time, of course, when you look at the total life of this earth. But it certainly created many organisms out of what were single-celled before. Similarly, if you look at Industrial Revolution, lots and lots of engines and motors within a period of 50 years started being embedded in other equipment. In fact, today we don't even think twice that there is already a motor as part of a fan in our laptops or in our PC. That would be the case in pretty much our hair dryers, and hair clippers and so on and so forth. The similar kind of a Cambrian explosion is what we expect with artificial intelligence apps. Just like what I explained before, if we look at the previous 25 years, in fact, there have been apps that have done so well in AI. They were trying to solve a particular problem. We believe similarly several hundred thousands apps will be created during the next 10 years. And very soon, by 2030, we would not even know that a particular system has inbuilt an AI app there. Of course, many of these apps, because they are AI, they would be machine learning apps, probably rely a lot on deep learning networks or their counterparts or other algorithms which are subsequent to deep learning networks, and they would begin to replace some of the human work. We in fact believe that about 10% of the current back office and middle office jobs will be replaced by AI automation by 2030. At the same time, we also believe that there will be quite a few jobs that will be created. We are already seeing a lot of jobs being created in labelers because supervised learning requires label data. We also are seeing already jobs being created in understanding or analyzing social media, which will become more and more important to differentiate fact from fiction and to understand what people are talking about a particular equipment, a particular product, and so on. Similarly, there will be jobs creating which will be of different kind of customer service and marketing and sales. The important aspect in customer service and marketing and sales is it's very human to human related. Most of the sales happen, a lot of the sales, if not most, happen because there are two humans involved and they believe in each other and so on. So definitely marketing and sales will benefit a lot from all the analytics, all the insights that come out of these AI apps, and the marketing and sales folks will increase their revenue and there would be more of them. The other area where new jobs will be created are, of course, programmers and those who are maintaining these several thousands of AI apps. As discussed before, we believe that during the next 10 years, there will be easily several hundred thousands of AI apps that will be created. And you will need, of course, you will need people to maintain them. You will need programmers to program these apps and so on and so forth. If there is any indication of the number of apps or number of software solutions, COBOL programming has about 12 million such apps being running in the world right now. The number of AI apps could over not take 10 years but more could easily fall in the same category of so many apps. For AI robotics also, there would be people required to maintain robots, program them and service them, etc., which will be again additional set of jobs that will be created. It's also clear that the kind of jobs that will be created will be different than the kind of jobs that are there and that will be lost. So people will have to reskill them and sometimes may have to take several courses online or by going to community colleges, etc. But all is not lost. So the general fear that AI will only end up killing jobs and not creating new ones is perhaps wrong and should not be given much credence to. In fact, it is very similar to what happened in the Industrial Revolution. At that time also, the Luddites and others felt that their jobs will be taken away, but actually Industrial Revolution created a lot of jobs because again all these motors and engines and equipment had to be maintained and had to be serviced and so on and so forth. The same will be true about AI revolution, which will be also pervasive, and AI apps will become ubiquitous, and therefore they will need to be maintained and serviced and so on and so forth. So clearly there will be jobs lost, there will be jobs gained. We'll have to see how things pan out in terms of what more losses or more gains. Only future will tell. Future is always hard to predict, and hence we don't know really what's going to happen. But it's a different world. It's a different world because this is a world of AI apps and not a world of the 1950s to 70s where AI was being considered as a general purpose AI. Thank you. Bye-bye.